consultant.
Thank you.
And environmental planning projects. And Merlyn is joining us tonight, and he is participating at a distance. So thank you. And also, I want to thank Brad Guest for writing all these nice things for me. Thank you, Brad. And now the stage is Lori to introduce our speaker tonight.
So thank you, Merlyn, and thank all of you for attending this evening's event. I'm Lori Catalano, a faculty member in landscape architecture, and it is truly my honor to introduce tonight's guest speaker, Jana McKenzie. Jana's alumni of the program. She received her BSLA, magna cum laude, in 1985. She's currently the principal and one of the owners of Logan Simpson, which is a multidisciplinary firm of approximately 100 professionals with offices in Fort Collins, Tempe, Tucson, Flagstaff, Salt Lake City, and Reno. We are fortunate that she has worked in Fort Collins since graduating. So she's been here her entire career. After graduation, she went to work for EDAW, a national firm that grew to be the largest planning and design firm in the world. Jana's passion for sustainability was ignited early in her career. In the 1980s, she designed the second ever xeric garden in Colorado at the time at the Fort Collins City Hall, which has endured throughout her career. She is one of 5 originators of the Sustainable Sites Initiative, which has become a nationally recognized design tool and rating system with the U.S. Green Building Council. And she was one of the first landscape architects in the nation to be a LEED accredited professional. She has been elected and recognized as a fellow by the American Society of Landscape Architects for her project's contributions to the excellence in profession. During her 35-year career, Jana has led design teams to design more than 75 parks, open space, trails, public building sites, as well as streetscapes and alleys. She's been involved and led design teams for projects such as the 2002 Olympics cross-country biathlon venue, and also the iconic America the Beautiful Park in Colorado Springs, and more recently, the Sloan Canyon National Conservation Area in Henderson, and an amphitheater renovation at the Colorado National Monument. She has also made great and significant improvements to our community right here. Some of these you may know: the Fossil Creek Reservoir Natural Area, Trimble and Tenney Court downtown alleys, Museum of Discovery, Larimer County downtown offices, and the new City of Fort Collins Utility Administration Building, and many more trails and bike paths that she's been involved in. She continues to serve and promote the profession by employing student interns, serving as the state chair for the State Board of Landscape Architects, and speaking at conferences. Her greatest passions are mentoring others, many of them students, learning new things, and spending time with family and friends. We are lucky to have her in our community, as she is a friend and especially a supporter of the department and specifically the landscape architecture program. Please join me in welcoming Jana McKenzie.
You got to turn yours off.
Okay.
Yep. All right, test. Is this okay? I hear it echoes, so if I start swirling, somebody catch me. So we'll see how that is. So my goal tonight, thank you for having me. There is a little bit of feedback here. I don't know if you guys are hearing. So we'll work on that. Maybe there's a volume control and go down a little bit on. My purpose for the lecture today, and it's a great honor to be selected for this. I didn't do this to be honored. Honestly, I do it because I love what I do. And my goal is to inspire others to go into the profession, or at least understand the profession, so the first thing they ask us is not, can you help me take plants? While we understand plants, that is this big of what we do. And so what I want to talk about today is identity and how much power you have and the choices you have in the profession, okay? So I picked, it's kind of hokey, right? With great power comes great responsibility, but it's true. You're responsible when you enter this profession. Maybe I just need to do page down instead of that. So it wasn't Spider-Man who actually coined that. Anybody read classics? Voltaire did. Voltaire was a great critic of the times and didn't like what was going on in France at the time. And so he is somebody who's dear to my heart in terms of, you know, testing norms and to think outside the box. He was sickened by the abuse of power and other people who would take advantage of them, right? Through some of the religions that were going on at the time. So he was a real advocate for those who are underrepresented, so to speak. So to that end, I would like to acknowledge Colorado State University's Indigenous People acknowledgements that we're standing here on lands that I'm not going to read it verbatim, that were originally settled by very noble people who knew how to be stewards of the land. And the acknowledgement talks about how important it is to acknowledge that and to continue education and inclusivity in terms of how we proceed in our lives. But Spider-Man did have it. There is a hero in all of this, right? What's heroism? Heroism is courage. Courage to stand up for what you believe in and for fulfilling a higher purpose, attaining a noble goal. It sounds like a sermon in here. You know what I'm talking about? But I do believe it's kind of like church here. Landscape architecture is very broad. I don't know if many of you knew this. And when I graduated, honestly, I'm not sure I knew it. I got in the profession and got exposed to so many wonderful things. Master planning is one city. Think of it as that we design everything outside the building. We either do it or we're always in partnership with it. We either direct or we support it and plan and making the world better. At all scales, from the hamburger out front to a city to a region, you'll see some of the projects. It incorporates all sorts of aspects of sciences, geography, it's mind expanding. Civil engineering, you don't have to understand a lot of that. Botany, anybody know what environmental psychology is? People's relationship to the earth. Anthropology, economics, and the arts. It's not just a pretty drawing, but incorporating the arts. And it's a serious job. We are the stewards of the land, and there's a lot of changes that are going on. This particular picture is the red background is Estes Park a few years ago. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So what we do is serious, but don't take your job too seriously. You know, you gotta have fun. Surround yourself with people who like to do what you do and that you can commune with, because while there's a heavy burden that we carry, you have to have some fun during it as well. So people ask me, how did you become successful? I didn't know I was successful. I guess I am where I would be standing here, you know. It's a lifelong process. It's not an end game. And I'm not done yet. So I love to help people to learn. It's a lifelong learning. So I haven't had success in all areas yet. So it's a process. It's not an end goal. How did I end up as a landscape architect? Good question. Like, here we are looking at stars. How do you do this? Anybody know this song? How did I get here? My God, what have I done? How will I work this? Where is that large automobile? Am I right? So I don't know. There were some, I did some soul searching. What were the pivotal events in my life? And I think a lot of it happened at about this time when I was about 10. Now you know exactly how. And the first moon landing really connected me to things that were outside of myself and watching it and thinking that the world is a pretty big place, but it's not as big as the universe, right? And then 2 solar eclipses that same year. We watched at Rittenberg Elementary. We went out and poked a hole. Yes, I was raised in the since I was 5. Poked a hole in the paper and folded it, and you can see that's Earth Day happened at the same time, the first Earth Day. All across the nation, millions of people showed up and there was a great environmental movement. And I'm still wondering if the time capsule is still under that tree there at Rittenberg Elementary. That was because I can remember putting stuff in it. Well, while I was at Rittenberg, people always wanted me to run for office, so I was secretary and former. Said, okay, so you students, all students here, you can't pick the mascot, you can pick the colors. So I was going to go after the mascot. Does anybody know why? This is important. What would be wrong with that? That's Arizona. And I was all about Colorado. There aren't any road runners here. So I wanted a native animal. And they said, well, you can pick, I think you can pick red and gold. Really? You're asking us to choose? And I was like, really? Come on. So I got disenfranchised. And then I learned that sometimes people in authority don't make wise choices, like who named CU buffaloes. They're bison. And this is an Institute of Higher Learning. Sorry. So let me get back to the point is that sometimes you can't get what you want. So then I said, well, don't worry about things you can't control. They don't know what they're doing anyway. So I'm going to find something that I can control. Things that I can work with and try to get consensus around. Because clearly I was powerless then. So my first lesson is find a way to be effective. The next one has to do with developing a worldview. A few years later, my father went on sabbatical and took us to a beautiful place, Switzerland. And I learned a lot about how important it is to speak another language, what other cultures are, traveling all around the diversity. Fort Collins has been literally white most of the time I was growing up. And so having to see people of color and people of different ethnicities showing up, it's awesome. I learned about city planning at that point, where you have clustered cities and you preserve open space in between, and how you have electrified vehicles and mopeds. And I also learned that the ski instructors were really cute. Had a lot of fun with that. But to develop a worldview, this was back in 1972, 73. They were already electric. They had electric trains. I come back and everybody has gas guzzlers and going skiing behind school buses that sneak, right? So all of that was very instrumental to me, I think, from a sustainability standpoint. Well, it's still a problem 50 years later, okay? We're still dealing with the same thing. Be patient, it takes decades and people are in denial, but we are still producing at the highest level in the US. It was down a little this year, that year it was reduced. But compared to the rest of the world, we're still consuming per capita and putting out more carbon than anybody else. And transportation choices are an issue. Transportation and a lot of the energy. We're transitioning out of coal to a lot of the renewable energy sources. And the vehicle choices, I actually bought myself an electric vehicle 4 years ago. So my second advice is develop a worldview. Get outside your head, get out, understand it, read books, discover, experience, challenge norms. The things that you thought were right and wrong, challenge yourself. Learn from history. Don't repeat bad stuff. Learn the good stuff and build on it. And definitely appreciate others. So how did I find CSU recently? I started in horticulture with the landscape design program one semester. But he taught me a class, and then I quit school because I already been for 3 years. And I'm going, okay, I need to take a break. So I took a job as a breakfast waitress, serving up grits, fried cornmeal mush, and bacon, having a good time. The only breakfast waitress, going as fast as you can. I learned a lot about that job. It's how you serve people. So have jobs that will serve people. But then I took a career assessment, what color is your parachute? And it told me about landscape architecture. And lo and behold, Merlyn showed up. Merlyn said, hey, come back to school in landscape architecture. And I'd had enough wait tables. And so I said, okay. I can show you some of this really rudimentary work. All by hand, really nothing stuff, right? We just drew on with markers and pens. And so he was gotten into visual simulation. Hi, Merlyn. I don't know if you remember this one. This is Dixon Dam. And so I tried to figure out how to get rid of what was the dam scar over there, the dam scar. And you look at it, and so I decided to plant it. Little did I know you can't plant things on dams or the roots will penetrate and then the dam breaks. But that was beside the point. I just said, okay, let's coat it, dirt, and let's put things on it. So I learned a little there. I learned to illustrate. I had the most fun in an art class. I'd never really drawn before. I was creative, could make stuff, but I approached it like a science. So don't be scared. Try it. It's a science. That's a lot of this is learning to draw, see the light, and you draw the dark. That's all it is. It's that simple. So to get a job, I showed up. Here I'm back in school, a couple more years into this. I'm getting pretty old at this point. Put my portfolio under my arm, my little handmade stripe thing, and put stuff in it and showed up and said, hey, I've got these drawings, I can do this. And they said, can you come tomorrow? So sometimes just showing up is right. And that's how I got in the door. Herb Shaw, you heard a little bit about this, is one of my mentors, founded the office here in 1974, and I showed up in 1983, 9 years later at that point, okay? Wonderful firm, started in San Francisco, and it had its roots in landscape architecture and environmental planning, and they did some of the most instrumental work in the country starting from 1939. Ekbo, Dean, Austin, and Williams. So I never met I met Ed Williams once, but I didn't meet the others. So he built an office here, and it used to look like this. This is where the Bohemian Foundation's building is, right next to the Blue Co-op downtown. So it used to look like that, and we renovated it, turned into a pretty courtyard. And I'll tell you more about that later. But my first project was that xeriscape garden you mentioned, which was really kind of fun. It was a summer student program that I was involved with. So I did a lot of different things. But I think the point is you also have to succeed. You have to learn the skills first. You have to learn the skills of use to somebody, right? You need to be able to help. So I learned how to do type and draw by hand and circles and print and do all those kinds of things. But by doing that, I got to see some great minds at work and learn a lot about the profession. And the diversity of potential projects is really quite amazing. It's quite mind-blowing what you can get into. So just to give you an example of how the thinking goes, is to associate people with who are thinkers in what you're doing. It's what makes your career exciting in the long run. Herb Shaw had me calculating the carbon sequestration potential of trees on a planting plan in 1985. How many years ago was that? Yeah, and we're still talking about it. So what I did was one of the things had to do with trying to come up with a methodology. So my advice is to innovate. So I had to do research and figure out what that was and decided, this isn't going to work because trees start little, they get big. Do you want me to do it midlife and other things? So we came through that whole full circle, and then I said, okay, I'm picking the mid-growth point and calling it good. But so there's Herb. He has fun. And I'm going to go through some of the projects and what I learned. This was the American County Open Lands Plan. It was the first plan that established open land system in northern Colorado. So that's on the walls back there. Those are little hand overlay maps that you run through things together. Someday I'll show you all old technology. But I learned a lot about open space planning. And they hadn't started their open space program yet. Reservoir resource management plans, things like Vallecito Reservoir down in the Durango area and Navajo, where you learn how to balance recreation use with the natural resources that are there. Mentioned the Fossil Creek Reservoir. We did the management plan and then did the design of the facilities out there. Designated seasonal closures so that the habitat's protected. That's the first time that had ever been done in an open space area, to my knowledge. You've already heard some of the Fort Collins area park. I was known as Miss Park because I designed so many parks for the first 10 years of my career, which is really fun. You could learn a bunch. You learn about detention ponds and sports fields and people in public meetings. One I wanted to show was Troutman Park. It was one of my first ones that I really dug in deep. So here I started in 85 full time, 86, and deep into this project. And I would say that's basically my design. What I learned is that you can do things that people say you can't sometimes. Like naturalize a swale through. We have two ponds, one's a forebay, one's an afterbay, so you can clean it out, right? And those pictures on the right those are recent photos. The structures are dated, they're 1980s. Things change. You think it's cool now, it's gonna be so has been in about 20 years. So get used to that, that's okay. But the structure of the park is still solid, right? It's functioning well. So things can be changed out from that. English Ranch Park's the same way. This is one here in town where the engineers wanted to have concrete drain pans through everything. And I told them why. Oh, it's easier to clean than long. And I said, what's you that? It was the first time we looked home with that concrete drain pan, and we made what was before anybody called it a pipe swale. So we naturalized it. A lot of Loveland area parks have been involved with. You might want to go and visit those sometimes. Happy to take people there for a site visit. But really got into a lot of sports parks, which was fun. Learned about turf. Then there's the Salt Lake Olympics. You said this was one of those big projects where I won, and I said, don't be intimidated because I'm the only woman standing in this group of very different men in Salt Lake and trying to win the project. And they did. They selected us, and I was the project manager on that. We didn't even have a principal there at that time because I wasn't a principal yet. So, but I think the point was, I surrounded myself with a lot of people who knew what they were doing. Local engineer, we have a person else, Phil Hendricks, who knew a lot about trails and all that kind of stuff. So you put it together so that you're successful as a team. Cool graphics, cool bird's eye. That's a sketch. Over an aerial photo kind of thing, helping with the stuff. But I think the point here was it was a temporary event. It was really cool. Stuff happens, but then you don't want to leave behind something you can't use. So it's now Wasatch Mountain State Park that people use and love. Did the Longmont downtown. Learned how to design a planter that's now in their standard brochure. You'll see that planter, that concrete planter. It was kind of fun. I also learned don't do too many crude painting patterns. Do you want to hear about that? Concrete cracks in square rooms. And you'll see people trying to make things fit in a lot of curves. It's really difficult. Anyway, just remember that. American Beautiful Park was really fun. That sculpture on the left is it's water in the middle of it. And that was part of the design competition, artist design competition, that you can be part of to help select artists, which was really fun. And you can also be an artist by designing those obelisks, which are really cool. It was the first use of LED I've ever done. That was 20 years ago. 20-something ago. And they're programmed, so you can play music in the LED. Pretty cool. Then they need principals. Some people call themselves principals as soon as they open a firm with 3 years experience. With it was a little more selective.
go work a little longer before somebody's gonna call you one of their partners, which then you own part of the firm, right? So I was pretty far into my career, like 18 years, something like that. And those three gentlemen were the other principals in the office, and that was our ride down into Atlanta to go have other people in the firm endorse me as principal. It was really instrumental in my life, is to become part of the owner of the firm. We did the alleys. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. You guys heard about that before and after. It was really fun. If you hadn't seen that, Tenny Court was pretty dire, so was Trimble. And then I'm kind of bouncing around in years, but being able to manage an office, that was a new challenge for me. I had to manage an office of about, were there like 60 people? 50, 60 people here in downtown Fort Collins. And that wasn't my greatest passion. I'm just going to be honest. I did it because I thought I could be good at it, and I did okay at that, but I was still doing projects at the same time, so it was kind of overwhelming. So be careful if you take on administrative tasks. But we did have a lot of fun. And then AECOM, which is a big international engineering firm, acquired EDA, and that pretty much was our demise. I'm not going to say a whole lot about that, but we lost our name and it became AECOM. We did things like the Liverpool Justice Center, you mentioned that, which is fun. You have to learn about sally ports. You know, like, hopefully none of you have ever been in those before. It's when we put prisoners in so that they can't escape, and have, you know, all the security stuff that's dealing with justice centers and police stations and stuff like that. But also a cool park out back where they now have a lot of music and stuff that goes on. Done interchanges. Has anybody stopped at that rest stop? Don't have to if you live here, right? If you're going down the highway, that's a Prospect and I-25. That was a fun one. And then the State Highway 392 Windsor interchange. That was a simulation that we did. And this is kind of how it's built today. So when you go to Denver, that was fun because it was all about, I've been working with Kurt and the other design team members here on how to make it feel like it's a vernacular for this landscape without being literal. So it's got a lot of the sandstone. It's got the little rubble rock and stuff like you see in the foothills. The landscape's suffering. We need to redo some stuff there. I was lucky enough to do work at military installations. I was the military installation master planner and designer for several years at Fort Greely, Alaska. One of two strategic missile defense bases. One's down in Vancouver in California, and then up here, that's to shoot out the Korean missiles. So I learned a lot about military-based planning and the places I don't want to go. I don't want to have that security clearance. I don't want that clearance. So my job was to try to make it a more humane place to live. Things like Ford Park and Vale for the Betty Ford Amphitheater and redoing that was really important to that community. One of the most highly contentious and more debates in Vale. And Aspen, you know, all these mountain communities and people that are money. They want to get involved in a lot of stuff and have a lot of fun. But it was fun redoing a lot of that infrastructure on Upper Bench there. The Mason Trail, that's cool, working with transportation engineers. We did preliminary design of all the stops and where they occur, but then we got to implement final design on the trails. And trails are fun. This was a master plan project that actually went through design development in the city of Henderson, Nevada, UP Railroad Trail. It's about 7 miles through 10. So you see, you don't just have to pick points. You can deal with indoor-outdoor learning spaces. This was the Museum of Discovery. And there used to be a trail that went through that had to be demolished. So we took it and stacked up that road to make our retaining wall there. And tried to figure out how to get rid of those utility boxes in the front, and we couldn't. So thank goodness they painted them. So then AECOM wanted us all to move to Denver. And we said we don't want to, because they wanted to sell the building we were in. And so
sorry. So there's 3 of us that started the Logan Simpson office. And then we still have 4 more that are with us. We took 11 to start with, and I think we have 7 left. Some people went on to do other things. I don't understand why this is advancing. Clearly, I need to go faster. We had to open a new office. That's a new challenge. And we're currently on Linden Street. Yeah, right across from Blind Pig. Do you guys know where that is? Yeah. What else do you know that's down there on Linden or Square? You go up those little stairs and you go up a couple flights of stairs and we're up on the 3rd level. And then we overlook the Forge. Does anybody know where that is? It's in the alley. Yeah, it's cool. I want to talk about some other kinds of projects as well. So Rivers Edge Natural Area is in Loveland, and that was restoration of ponds and creating public use areas. I kind of like that sign design, which was kind of fun too. A lot of things have happened in the last 10 years that I would say is some of the most instrumental work and the most significant things that I've been involved with. And it had to do with the 2013 flood, right? This is the 10-year anniversary of that just happened. And it happened in 1976. And one of my partners and mentors, Tom Keith, worked on the 1976 flood recovery. Goodness gracious, again, it's all, yeah, but a lot of things wiped out, took months to rebuild, and it was a huge restoration master plan. We were a sub-consultant to an engineering firm who was coming up with the designs that they were going to implement for US 34 through this canyon and how to deal with the river restoration at the same time. So we worked with them to illustrate a lot of the ideas of how something could be restored, so that the public could understand it, and that because the lay people don't understand this stuff. So you have to be able to communicate engineering concepts into palatable drawings, right? With cross sections and before and after riprap. How is riprap buried and how does it work, right? We put together a website. You might be website designer. This had to do with all the people who would drop pins on this thing and then put a comment. This is 10 years ago. It's got the technology's got a lot easier to do that. But this was one of the first ones I ever been involved with, where they said, I like this is happening. And so this was a public involvement tool so that people could comment and say what needs to happen. So I thought that was pretty cool. We've done downtowns, did Johnstown down here. Everybody was against this. I still hear people complain. Everybody hates narrow streets, right? But they had no sidewalks. They had no place to hang out. I said, okay, something's got to give. So instead of being diagonal parking, we put parallel parking. Yes, they lost a few spaces, but they figured out how to put parking behind the buildings. So right now it's pretty successful downtown. We've done it in Fruta, master plans on how to deal with their downtown, and then subsequently design a few blocks through Fruta. Came up with the master plan for the Lincoln Corridor. Hey, there's another iconic Odell. Does anybody know where Odell is? Yeah. Everything we do here is about bikes and beers, right? That was pretty cool because you had to learn about different transportation and street cross sections that would move traffic, but also bicycles and people all at the same time, and come up with a way to solve all those issues and deliveries into the businesses. Mahaffey Park in Loveland's really kind of a fun one. That one was based on the history of the Overland Trail that went through this area, which was fun. So we took a lot of cues on the design of that, and the compass there on the lower right, again, that's working with an artist, is sort of an abstraction of how the pioneers found their way across the plains to end up in Loveland, which was known as the cherry capital. Cherries didn't live very long because they all froze. But we still did plant an orchard there in an attempt to try to reintroduce some trees because we wanted urban agriculture. It has a detention pond. There's the orchard. This one was really fun. Let's see what we got here. I think I'm doing it right. Visiting Smith Mountain Park. You guys ever drive up to Estes? Right, it's on the way. And it was totally destroyed with the 2013 flood. So this is how it went before. I'll tell you the quick story. Does my cursor work on this? Can you see that on these slides? You can you? That's all right. So over where those rubble piles are was a power plant. And originally in the 1920s, they built a hydroelectric plant right there. And the river originally kind of bent before the 2013 flood. It went like that, kind of like that, but it was really minor channel. And then they put a building right in the way of where the velocity really wants to go down the river. Well, in the 1976 flood, that got like that. So they moved the power plant a little closer to the hill. There was a new foundation. Well, and then they put the river back in the old position, and there was still a park, and they built it as a park that was very urban in character. It had all these ornamentals and bluegrass and everything else. So nature has a way of fixing things always. So at the 2013 flood, wiped out that other power plant, and it sent the river right over to the edge of 34 there. It also wiped out some of the civilian conservation corps historic structures, which are really cool up there, unfortunately. And it was a huge flood. There's many things. So what we did was take it, so you can see what happened in the CDOT and their infinite wisdom to put the river again back to where it was, where it didn't want to be. So our process was saying, let's follow the forces of nature now. And so you can see before and after the channel that came back through. There's a tree right in the middle of all those pictures. That's your reference point. So we filled in the whole channel and we made it go around the edge as where it wants to flow around the bend instead of taking a hard left. Rivers don't take hard lefts or hard lefts, you know. Well, so it turned out really well. We wanted to tell the story of water, which they ended up not blasting into the rocks, but you know, this is all part of the innovation. Tell the story, something meaningful. What's the power of water? How much does the water generate in terms of energy? How many light bulbs would it power? So, and this is the way it looks now. It's not bluegrass, it's all native, natural. There's a lot of engineering in this river. There's what's called lateral trains that go across that fix the channel so that it can't move anymore. And I mean, can't is the loose term. Big enough flood at night. But, and then we made this fishing platform over there. And so most people build platforms that are like decks. How satisfying is that to sit there and dangle your hook off the edge? And I fish and higher water waters. Fishing is not good. The water's going too fast, you can't catch a fish. So in the highest higher flood waters every 2 years, the flood, it comes over that platform, the river goes over. You can't be fishing then. Raging, the water raging. So when it goes down, people can get back down to the edge of the river. So we had to engineer it so that the velocity doesn't wipe that out. There's concrete, big rocks. You can't see. And then interpretive signs in natural landscape that turned out quite nice. So I'm very proud of this one. We won an honor award from Colorado Chapter of ASLA a couple years ago with that. And then an artist came in and built this kind of cool contemplative sculpture as the memorial to, and it looks like bubbles. I don't know, what do you think? Kind of bubbles, water, I like it. So they had memorials all over this park before, like on benches and little plaques. They're all engraved now, you know, it removed, I don't know how many 100,000 cubic yards of material out of this, and everything else went. So yeah, this was a better solution, is to sort of make it more, instead of little benches with plastic. The Fort Collins Utilities admin building, Steve Sealer works with me. He does amazing visual simulations. When I moved Fort Collins, that little building that says cafe on it was part of the food I was in there. I never know in there. We didn't. And it used to be in a little different area in the site, but we figured out where to replace it in same orientation, put the footprint on the site of where it used to be and move it over. Now it's like a cool cafe. I think it turned out really nice, as well as having, it's a LEED platinum. It was the highest LEED platinum in the country at the time. So Fort Collins does a really great job
of being a leader in sustainability. So this was a good exercise. What we learned didn't work was the green wall.
You guys know about that story, Scott, you were there, Jane, and that's one.
And we really wanted to do a green wall and it just couldn't be maintained. And people couldn't do it, so that failed, but it was back there by the enclosures, the utility enclosures. Heritage gardens, that was fun. Working with all the people in the horticulture department to figure out what that should be like. And the center, I'm a little worried because I drove down the other day and it's like we reconstructed on it in that one. Wasn't our structure designs, anybody know?
It's part of the it's a rock, we read about it when we constructed it above where you can actually back and take on the stuff. In the street was like the street, you know.
So you don't think it wasn't a failure first side?
No, you're.
Okay, we're good. Didn't know that, but it was kind of fun, you know, trying to make that work. I want to talk a little bit about a different scale of things. So I would say a lot of these things have been sort of site design, very tangible. We do system-wide planning. We did the state of New Mexico's SCORE, State Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan. It is a requirement of all states to update that so they can get land and water conservation funds from federal government. So we did it for New Mexico 2 years ago. And that was kind of interesting. We're in high level policy the state on where to invest and what's important from a statewide perspective. And then I've probably done 40 parks and recreation activities. Well, it's how you deal with the public on what they need from their green infrastructure. In a community where the parks go, where the gyms go, the demonstration. How do non-traditional spaces now play into recreation centers, recreation programs? We have subs, we have sub-consultants who help us with recreation programs. So they need to be updated about every 10 years. But it's how we city council or county, like I told you, the organized plan, that's how they budget their money. That's how they ask people to have themselves, it says that says, I really want to do this something, I want to work, I want this trail system. So that's how you get the community involved, rapidly around the community with some things involved. From an outdoor perspective, and some indoor recreation as well. So some of the innovation that I think is probably something that I have a little to do with, it's not even standard practice in the industry. Some of it has to do with how we establish our levels. We like to compare ourselves against other communities. 2 acres per 1,000 of neighborhood. 2 acres of neighborhood farmland, 1,000, or 4 acres per 1,000 of community parks. I just brought them down, but they're different for a community. National Recreation Park Association wanted to normalize it across the country, and I said, there's absolutely no way that's makes sense. So we started working on all the certain ways to analyze that specific to each community and what they could afford, what they could do, what they want to put into their parks. And it's going to be different if you're in Manhattan in a very dense urban environment than if you're in a suburban community. The other thing has to do with the walking distance. Everybody was drawing circles. I used to draw circles. That's not how people walk. They don't walk over the house to the next community. So we started doing GIS and we ran. You figure out how people can walk. So the bubble looks quite different. There were a lot less people who could get to this park. And so we started analyzing that. So that was part of the innovation. And then we get into specific project recommendations, which get the community excited. This is one for Inglewood. We've done several plans for them over the years. But they wanted to get people excited about renovating some of their parks. So we came up with some conceptual plans because they want to go for it on this sheet of bonds, go for it and then pay for it. And so they have some three visualizations of it. So that they can allow people to start moving these projects and get people excited about them. or in Delta, Colorado, tiny little Delta, poor community, wonderful potential, coming up with examples of how they could do a riverside access point. So having worked on rivers enough, I knew kind of how to design this without even being an engineer, right? And then show them how you can do that. I don't know if they've found the money yet or not, but we just did it in McCall, Idaho. So just did the whole world. Somebody know McCall is? Beautiful little place on Payette Lake, very tourist oriented. This was where we brought park. It's their gem, small community, but we have to figure out how to do all of these. So that was all part of the policy planning that we do. It's gonna be really exciting. We do capital cost estimating. So you have to figure out what's going in these projects and how much to budget for them. What are the components that go into it? And then we're not going to budget. You can package. That might or might not be affordable. And then you have to prioritize and say, what are you going to do first? So you work with the community to figure that out. There you go. Isn't that exciting? Those are the cost estimates. We deal with those a lot. The last thing you did, the amount of time you actually spend drawing pretty pictures on a plan is pretty small. Just going to tell you. The rest is figuring this stuff out, which is so exciting. It's how to make good decisions. That's what landscape architects do. Here, property tax spreadsheet. City of Steamboat Springs. I had to relate how much property tax they might get for certain tax levels. Actually, that was Steamboat's analysis. Okay, so yeah, we have to use our math brain. If you don't like that, you don't have to do it. Yeah, somebody else who can, but for me, the most exciting part about it was I'm just not done learning yet. We put together graphics and have to organize people. Denver parks have never organized themselves. It sounds crazy, right? I mean, they're changing. They have a lot of things going on. Bless their hearts. It's just so to have to work through a 2.5-year process to explain their park system. So for as an ongoing to people, number one, it's like, what is our system about? Tell us about what this place. So we ran the whole process to try to get all these different divisions in Parks and Rec, design planning groups together to try to figure out how they're going to do business. And it deals with their construction standards and everything at the end. So we had to package it all in a document, but it was fun making little cool graphics. And infographics, so you hover over them and then you pop on it and then it goes to the page. Quite intense from a PDF standpoint, I will say. But yeah, so that's the table of contents. It looks like that. So you click on the 4 and it jumps you to chapter 4 and then it's something else and it jumps you something else. So one of the most things I'm most excited about lately comes back to us. The importance of a revision faculty. I love this graph. I have to say, we kind of stole it from a concept that I had seen, and then we made it so that the graph was good, because we did Lakewood system. Imagine tomorrow, parks, and recreation for all. So it had to do with equity and inclusion. We came up with a new model on how to consider the most disadvantaged communities, historically underrepresented communities, through the model that you put in GIS. Including where they haven't had investments in the past. Where has a city not invested in this? So yes, we use a lot of GIS for analysis tools. And then we change it to some other programs a lot of times because GIS isn't necessarily pretty sometimes. Just gonna say. This one is the GIS product. And if you know Denver area at all, to the lower left is where that Bear Creek Lake Park is and all the open space is. That's where all the airline people are. And then the upper right is the flex group. Is where the lower income, transit dependent, health deficient in some areas, other things that are going on. So that they've chosen to now invest more money into those areas to try to get people access to parks and recreation. So I'm very happy about that. Fairfax Park was kind of an exercise in that as well. Fairfax Park is right in Park Hill neighborhood. right at the edge of the old ethnically diverse neighborhoods and very rich at the on south. And so we had this great process and everybody showed up. It was really fun. And I think at the end of the day, people were really happy. We had people designing things for the model. But what I wanted to do, and it hasn't happened yet, was with UCD, because they're there, is to do the research on does the user profile match the demographics of the neighborhood. So where we're getting as a profession is measurements and metrics. You have to prove performance of a project, right? To be able to justify it over time. Well, you don't have to, but wouldn't it be nice to know what all the things together? Wouldn't it be nice to know that the people who are showing up at this park are actually who designed it? And if not, what do you learn from that? Was there something here that people aren't feeling comfortable or safe in the space? So it's a way for us to learn. It's still really missing out of it. We need university partners to deliver on that because the private sector does not have the money to put into that. All the monitoring. So all involved for any research projects or other things. I have a ton of ideas of projects. This is how it looks now. It's all built. So wonderful little, oh, there's like a little hamster cage over there as a play equipment. It's cool. It's because it's really space limited. We went vertical in here. Anyway, we'll see how it turns out over time. One of the last ones I want to talk about, St. Charles Mason Park. This one is in an impoverished neighborhood that's near, you know where the still the people who live here came in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s, and they're New Mexicans, not Mexicans, a lot of them. They had moved from Mexico, and there's a whole history here. But a lot of them came for agriculture, and they came to work the steel mill. Well, as a result of the steel mill, they have contaminated lands that right now there's some environmental justice stuff. So I feel like, you know, this is like my project and I gotta give them something. They have had nothing happen in this area for a long time. And they have some pretty dense neighborhoods. And then they have all these agricultural properties out everywhere. And everybody says, we don't need a park. They don't even want a dog park. They don't think they want a dog park, but a few people there do. I think I lost that battle. In any case. So this is cool. It wasn't that picture in the upper right is where they would get water. The Ojito was the local well. They would take their buckets down there. This neighborhood didn't have running water or sewer until 1985. They had some running water, but they had outbuilt houses. So, you know, there's a whole history here. So I'm really happy to be able to come up with a park design we're working on. I'm not going to go into detail on it. We're coming up with the final master plan right now. Katie, you're going to be drawing that pretty soon. Historic and interpretive site, which is really fun. Retell the story. Now, a lot of people are bored by history. What's the purpose of history? Yeah, what is it's kind of interesting, right? The best part of history is how it relates to today. So when people talk about interpretation, it's not really today understand how history that's one. That makes sense? There's a difference there. It's not a book on a stick. It's about a lesson that you learn. So we have many different kind of historic sites that we're working on. One with Nathan Meeker's house, and really, which would be a fascinating story if you know about the Indian history. In any case, so Saddleburn Amphitheater, I was there in 1966 when it was built, when I was a little tiny kid, and now it's historic, and so am I. and I have the pleasure of going and renovating these benches and things that were built when I probably sat down with my little 6-year-old Tisha there. And now they're all, and we have to renovate all that stuff. It's co-design. A visitor contact station in Sloan Canyon, which is about ancient petroglyphs from indigenous people. So you can go walk out into and see amazing petroglyphs. We do a lot of reservoirs, more reservoirs. Chimney Hollow is gonna be built pretty soon. This is a new, and then on the right is Wolf Creek that's proposed. I'm not a big fan, I'm just gonna say, of reservoirs. Especially ones that are power pumped forever instead of gravity fed. To me, that's sort of a. But there's, I can talk about that philosophy later, and it's kind of like building highways. You're never gonna build them big enough. Just gonna say, if we just turned off all the bluegrass lawns in Colorado, we probably wouldn't have to build new reservoirs. And I just did that in my backyard, took half of it out, so been too long. So we have to reach the community, learn all the tools to talk to people and to reach them. People don't come to meetings, just like who really wants to come to a lecture? It's not really, I mean, so you want to be Zoom, you want to go drink beer and shop. Meetings there, or you do it at a festival, you do it during another event. So we have a whole toolkit of things we do now. Try to get comfortable talking in front of people, it's hard. The hardest thing I did in college, or in high school, was a speech class, and they told me not to talk about class. What? What's something, Richard Latin lawyer, making metals, right? You're making a case, build your case, and then tell your story. So that's how you're going to present well. And practice the 8 R's. People think it's just recycle, recycle, recycle. No, that's the last thing you do. What's the first thing you do? You refuse it. Don't take it in the first place. Reduce it. Use less if you do take it. Use it. If you can't do it, repair it, gift it, recover it, then recycle. So please keep that in your mind. I would hope that nobody's drinking out of single purchase water bottles anymore. Oh, Lori's got one. Gotcha. This was my promise 12 years ago. I bought one of these and I bought one of those in that time frame because of that single use stuff. So, and I keep losing them at airports. And I was telling Lori that I said, well, but when I lose all my stickers whenever I lose my bottles. So stay curious. Okay. That's what this is all about. You'll never know it all. There was an article I just read in The Guardian. It's a Guardian US. It's an online publication, which is quite provocative and insightful. Covers things that other media things do not. And it was about an Irish student who had a high school teacher who told them about their quest and what was so interesting about knowledge. It was like going into a mine or into a cave. And you put on lines in that, and you go into the cave, and you see this much. And then you come in this part, and then you see this much. And then you go through there, and it's bigger. I feel like this is our world. And it's the right spot, and you're going to know it all, but you can see and you about it with you. So, the world is your oyster. Do go for it and be good. That's what I'm going to say. How do I stop sharing? And I think I need to come over to my Zoom meeting.
How about any questions?
What do I have? You're done. Okay.
Oh, yeah, you got out of Zoom, so you cut off online.
Do I need to go back in for questions?
Why don't you take questions and we'll handle the technology?
Okay, why don't you do that? Anybody? I didn't want to do residential. And so I said, well, it's the world versus society. I wanted to have a broad leadership. That was for me. And sort of. Totally there. The question was there, did you do that? Something that I was wrong. I've had projects in 5 years. I had other ones in 2 years. Just depends what you do. Yeah, you know, what you need to produce. Or 1 hour. This is sort of this, yeah. And it's not dependent on what we do. It has to do with the clients getting behind the review process, and they have to input or some involvement process, set up meetings, and we have to get together. So things are there's something about it, but those things one time. So the private involvement is not.
What seems to be the most crazy, most bonkers one you think?
If you just stand right here, they can see your face.
Oh, if I stand here, can I see Merlyn too?
He's got his screen on.
You got a screen off, okay. Bonkers project, oh my goodness. It just depends on how you learn to find that. Probably one of the most complicated, at least early in my career. Bonkers is kind of a hard one to define. Very challenging was that America the Beautiful Park, because we came up with an idea for the whole district. They wanted to do a site. I said, you can't design the site without looking at its context. So we came up with a structure plan that had to do with putting a bridge over, which is now the Olympic Museum bridge, over to that park. But the idea that there needed to be a connection from downtown. And we also said that you don't have enough park space, so we curved a road. So, you know, so that part, I learned so much about that because I learned from engineers about the scour potential of rivers. So from bonkers, really learning all that stuff. And it was had the artist. And I'm involved in the time very expensive project and so all. But that was the most bonkers that. No, that was interesting because I've never been in the military. Some of you might have military families, and I had no idea that there was. I really just sort of poo-pooed the idea of strategic missile defense. Oh yeah, right. Well, there's like different levels of aids there. So I showed up myself and I started just walking around, and pretty soon all these vehicles come after me, and they've got their big guns. And I'm going, hi, and I'm taking pictures. And please just and oh, geez, he said, okay, I just got okay, but boy, was that scary. Zoom in with their guns, and you know, I don't. There's many stories. Oh, one story is that with English Ranch Park, I designed through the public process. And where they were in public input, where we thought this was just great. A real did not like the restaurant. She invited the city manager, came over to her house, and we had a private meeting with them. This was like the record story all over again. It was above my pay grade. I went in there and they told me to change it because she didn't like it. And I said, we've been through a public process. He says, it doesn't matter. The public won't care. And that was a city manager. That was the ultimate boss. I could not change that. The park's fine the way it is now. I just felt just totally used. You know, we'd gone through this legitimate process. So that was bonkers. And that does happen, which is very frustrating. Then you have to be humble. And I was like, yes, sir. Okay. I know who's paying the bill. So. Other questions?
Like history and very important. A lot of time. In order to use space that you know, better how do you understand
Thank goodness for the internet right now. Number one, because I learned a lot about Salt Creek through the internet. And learned enough that I could then have an intelligent conversation with the people who live there, what I thought might be some of their issues. Otherwise, you ask the people, what is important to you? It's their park, it's their culture. Involve the indigenous communities, which is a whole nother question on how to best do that, because they are separate nations. They are separate nations, you know, on how they operate. And so there's a whole protocol and from the federal government standpoint to do that. But yeah, you do a lot of research, come up with an idea with because I grew up around here. I knew trails. And so with Mahaffey Park, I thought, well, yeah, the trails got to go through here somewhere. So we tried to figure it out, and they actually found some old remnants, but it'd been plowed over. So it's, you know, it's just sort of a paying homage to the overland trails there, but without being literal. Yeah, I hate being too literal about some of the stuff because you can look that up online. So my idea is to make it intriguing, make it more intriguing so people ask questions. If they don't get it, fine. They do. Don't hit somebody over the head with it. At least is, in my opinion, unless it's a visitor center, you're supposed to, you know, you're supposed to do that. We have National Historic Trails plans designed for the site in Casper. And they had never told the Native American story yet up there. It was all about the Mormon Trail, the California Trail, all the people that were coming up, you know, the dominating culture. And so our thought there was, let's find similarities between these folks. You're moving across the prairie, so what will they be using? They're using wheeled vehicles and actually Mormon hand carts with dragon stuff, you know, doing other things, but they use travois and they use dogs. To haul a lot of their things. So what are the commonalities? So I think it's the opportunity is to build those bridges so people aren't scared of different cultures. We all have pretty much the same wiring, you know, want the same things in life. So you try to figure out those commonalities and to not sanitize history. I have a shirt that says read damn books. I totally believe that's right. Yeah. Because you can't get over what happened, it happened. So, okay, get on. Doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean I'm bad. It means let's move forward in a positive way to make everybody feel like they belong. It's not about the past, it's about moving forward.
I mean, off of that, what has one of your most impactful historic
You know, honestly, I haven't done a ton of those historic designs. Impactful. I'm hoping to do one that could be really cool. We're working on this because Nathan Meeker was an early settler of Greeley and the Greeley Union Colony. And so he has a whole history there. And there's a site there that's where the Meeker Museum is. And it's this traditional Victorian house with a bluegrass lawn and stuff there right downtown. You know, it's a lovely little site. But thank goodness to the museum director there. If you look at their page, Greeley Museums, what they say, it's pretty cool. He wanted to know if there's a way to tell the other story of the Meeker family. And the Meeker family, what their bigger story was, well, they did settle in this area, which impacted indigenous cultures clearly. But the big event was the Meeker event, which is over in Meeker, right off the White River, on the west slope. And that's where he became, after he moved from Greeley, he went over there and he became the Indian agent, what they called them, who were telling those Native Americans they couldn't live the way they did anymore. They couldn't graze their horses here. They couldn't do that. They couldn't do this. This was in the 1860s, right? And so they got so fed up with it, they came and they murdered Meeker. They had enough. He was taking away their ability to hunt game, to make a living. They were starving. So they murdered Nathan Meeker. And then they took his wife and kids and they took them over into Utah to the reservation. She befriended the Indians there, and she became the advocate for the indigenous people going forward. It's a fascinating story. The wife and the daughter. So, you know, I would, but without, that's just the story. That doesn't have any indigenous peoples into it, right? That need to see what story they want to tell. What does this tribe want to say about that? So hopefully that will come to fruition in the next few years if somebody comes up with funding to be able to go forward with that project, which would be cool. And they may say, no, I don't have anything to do with it. This isn't the right place to tell that story, which may be perfectly true. So fascinating, yeah.
Change the way they're gonna know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, one story is that I picked the wrong color benches at Rossboro Park in town. Oh, they were awful. Awful. The story number one is do not pick colors of sitting inside. Go outside. Everything lightens. They turned this pasty green. It was awful. I would definitely do that over again, a different color. Yeah, they're pasty, awful green. Other things you learned, like long run, the concrete. It was a cool pattern, but it breaks. It doesn't crack the way it needs to, so it needs to be redone in a little different way. But it served its purpose with time. It was pretty cool. I think it's still there. It might still be okay. There's all sorts of little lessons you learn just about every project. Yeah. Never do a planting design without having the person who's going to maintain it be there, or a site design. Because even though you think, oh yeah, you should be able to maintain it, if they can't, it's going to fail. That happens over and again, actually. And then it looks like crap later. You know, you go in there and say, what happened? Well, we couldn't maintain it. So you have to understand that as part of the design. Yes. Sorry, I'm looking this way. I need to stand over here. Both of those, because a lot of communities have their public PAIOs, whatever, you know, the public engagement, or the face of the community, and then they have some other small communities that have no idea. You know, so when I was doing the Joe Roll Park down in Delta, a community of 750 people, you know, I just showed up at the Riverfest and had everybody come and did an online questionnaire and do what you can. So you just kind of learn what the tools are, and they're adapting really quickly. Mentee polls, other things during your public meetings, all this other stuff you can do. So no, I was really dumb when I got out of school. I mean, I just knew the skills, right? It's a long process. It really is. So don't beat yourself up if you don't get it right stuff. And forget to ask other people on what works for what I'm saying, because it applies to you. I don't do golf. I live at a golf course community and I don't golf. I back up to open space. Yeah. What can I tell you about that? They're going to happen anyway. It was something I never really wanted to do. I've done some of it. I was involved with the original Centerra when it was Rocky Mountain Village and rebranded it to Centerra, the big development down there, big money development. Which was a wonderful experience, sort of master planning, all that kind of stuff. Primarily residential you're talking about? Yeah. No, there's some things that kind of give me a little heartburn because everything's named after what it used to be. Fox Run or, you know what I mean? But people have to have places to live. So I don't have a great answer for that. It's kind of like getting involved with something. Are you a player or are you not? If you feel like you can affect change and do it better than the last one, then feel good about what you're doing, right? It's going to happen. So so it just wasn't something that was my passion, you know. So I didn't go down that. Thank you so much, everybody. I didn't know if Merlyn wanted to say anything. He has his mic off. Did you want to say anything, Merlyn? Are you still there? He's probably stepped away. I was just went way too long. Okay, you did?
I tried running online and he said, thank you, and you were responsible.
Yeah, he's the reason I'm here.
And we also have some like refreshments outside, some water, some bubbly water and some.
Can I leave now? This meeting, am I supposed to sign out? I think so. Okay, thank you so much, everybody.